Here we are. Hello, everybody. My name is Gabriel Klaasen, and I am one of your hosts today. I work at an organization called Project 90 by 2030, as well as African Climate Alliance. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here with the other host of today's meeting. Shaazia, do you want to check in on yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Shaazia. I'm with the Climate Justice Coalition, and I work as a digital and communication specialist.
Yeah, I think it's really funny because in both Shaazia and my field, a big part of our work is comms, and it's kind of holding space for today. So we aren't your ordinary space holders, but it's amazing that you could all be here today, and we hope that the space is one for conducive conversation and more going forward. Today's webinar is a bit of a deep dive into what does it mean to uproot the DMRE, and so we'll learn a bit more now from Shaazia about the background of the hashtag uproot the DMRE campaign, and I'll fill in the little gaps here and there. But today it's really about looking at the current state of our Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, and discussing how best we can bring forward change as civil society from our different sectors, breaking down the silos that we oftentimes unconsciously find ourselves working in. And that's why this meeting today, it's got individuals from different organizations, different community-based organizations as well as different networks like Energy Governance South Africa, Climate Justice Coalition, and South African Climate Action Network. We're wanting to kind of foster a bit of relationship building as we build a campaign together and a movement of climate, social, and system change justice. So yeah, passing on to you, Shaazia. A massive thank you to everyone again, and just a little bit of a deep dive into the background of Uproot the DMRE campaign.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gabriel. So what I'm going to do is just speak a little bit about the origins of the campaign and maybe some earlier strategy, engagement in campaigns, and then speak a little bit about where we are now. And then Gabriel will hopefully fill in some gaps in case I left anything out. So the Uproot the DMRE campaign was born from the Climate Justice Coalition's other campaign, which is Green New Eskom. That campaign outlines one of the biggest obstacles to climate change and a more socially and ecologically just future for South Africa, which is the Minister Gwede Mantashe and his Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. So based on this, the Climate Justice Coalition set out to organize a nationwide mobilization targeting the DMRE and demanding transformation. Having spent months prior consulting with coalition members and civil society organizations who had long been struggling against the DMRE's harmful policies and practices, our demands can be summarized as follows. Number one, the leadership and structure of the DMRE must be transformed to fulfill a mandate for an inclusive, socially, economically, and ecologically just energy and mining future. Mantashe must step aside to allow new progressive leadership. Number two, a rapid and just transition to a more socially owned, renewable energy-powered economy, providing clean, safe, and affordable energy for all, with no worker and no community left behind in the transition. Number three, we say no to new polluting, corrupt, and expensive coal, oil, and gas projects. Officials within the department must be investigated around irregular deals. We reject the corrupt, costly, and unnecessary powership program. We demand 1 million climate jobs instead. Number four, communities must have the right to say no to mining projects that include free, prior informed consent, the upholding of social labor plans, and the right to sustainable alternative modes of development. Number five, Minister Mantashe and the DMRE must stop blocking and inhibiting Eskom's transition to renewables. We need a green new Eskom driving a just transition to a more socially owned, renewable energy future. So in our earlier strategy, engagement, and campaigns, we go back to the week of the 22nd of September 2021. Hundreds of people were involved in actions targeting the DMRE in every province across the country. So we partnered with a youth-led outfit called Politically Aware and produced an award-winning satirical video making fun of how the DMRE had sold themselves and South Africa out to polluting corporations. So the public narrative around Mantashe's DMRE has shifted because of our campaigning and actions. In the months following our mobilization, the Sunday Times named Mantashe Mampara of the Week for his fossil fuel-loving antics. Daily Maverick named him Polluter of the Year. The Mail and Guardian gave him an E rating for his performance and suggested that he should do the country a favor and resign. Similarly, News 24 gave Mantashe a 2 out of 10 in their ratings, saying he needs to go. But where are we now? Today, we find ourselves in a context where the minister is exposed for exactly what he is. We have gotten under his skin enough that he has threatened to sue the General Secretary of the CJC. While we've successfully campaigned to expose Mantashe for what he is, and even though he has not stepped down yet, there are other demands under Uproot the DMRE campaign. Is it time to shift strategies? Is it time to rethink our demands, to look inward and ask ourselves again, what does it mean to uproot the DMRE? That's why we're here. We're here to answer some of these questions.
Thanks, Shaazia. I think you've summarized it quite well. And I think a lot of where we find ourselves today actually goes further back than that. I mean, the planning for the kind of nationwide protest began in November 2020, I believe. And it was quite a powerful thing because it started off with the origins of the mobilization being a youth day kind of focus. And then we realized, hold on a second, we can make this more powerful if we make it intergenerational and we focus it on a specific area, especially one that South Africa finds itself in right now, which is the energy crisis that we find ourselves in. So yeah, the hashtag Uproot the DMRE was aligned with the global, international global strike of uproot the system. And so we sat around one day and we were like, uproot the DMRE, because to its core, what we're trying to do is acknowledge the fact that while the DMRE is corrupt and more, there's a lot of work that needs to be done for us to reach a future that allows us to benefit from the access to energy that we need, but also acknowledging the fact that we don't want to continue being plagued by the corruption and devastation that we find ourselves at the hands of the DMRE. And so it's really about pulling the weeds out in between the food garden to ensure that we still have the food to eat for ourselves, but that we don't have the corruption plagued between it anymore. And so, yeah, I think it's a brilliant kind of backstory of where we find ourselves right now. And enough of us talking, just a bit of a forecast of where we're going today, and then just look into who our panelists are. And so just a rundown of the rest of today's session is we're going to kind of move into a bit of a panel discussion right now, not as kind of structured and formal as you might think, but one that kind of allows the panelists to kind of talk to each other and play off one another's energies, and then moving in to a little bit more of a Q&A area. So as the panelists are busy answering the first two questions, we encourage you all to start pulling together some ideas for questions that you can pop in the chat and we can read aloud, or you can raise your hand when the time comes. From there, we'll move into the last question before going into breakout rooms, because a big thing that we wanted to do with this webinar was really break the idea that it's us talking to you, but rather us coming together at the end after displaying as much information as we can from different areas and encouraging a space for strategic collaboration and discussion. And so we'll go into breakout rooms and we encourage you all to engage there, and one person to come back and feedback to the group. Hopefully out of this meeting, we can have some form of a harvest of information that can be shared with you all, and a campaign reinvigorated going forward through the rest of 2023 and the years to come. So yeah, that's just a massive thank you again to all our panelists who Shaazia will introduce right now.
So we have 4 panelists today, which you might have already seen, and I will read out their bios to you. But we're speaking to Promise, Kholwani, Thandile, and Alex, who all come from pretty different and interesting backgrounds, and we're hoping that we can mesh all their ideas together to form quite a nice full picture and conversation. So I'll start off with Promise Mabilo. Promise, I don't know if you want to say hi to everybody as well while this is on screen, or if they won't be able to see you, but you do what you feel. So Promise is with the Vukani environmental movement. She's the coordinator there. She's based in Mpumalanga, eMalahleni, an area where most communities are affected by the harsh realities of coal mining. So thank you, Promise, for joining us. Our second panelist is Kholwani Simelane. So Kholwani Simelane is a youth educational and environmental activist who believes in a justice and equality in a system that continues to cripple the voices of communities and ignores their voices. He works as an advocacy officer at the Green Connection. Kholwani, I don't know if you want to say hi, but if not, we'll go to Thandile Chinyavanhu, who is with Greenpeace Africa. Thandile works as a climate and energy campaigner for Greenpeace Africa. She writes about public health, energy access, climate mitigation, and the intersectionality of climate change, particularly its impacts on women of color. Welcome, Thandile. Finally, we have Alex Lenferna from the Climate Justice Coalition. Alex serves as the elected General Secretary of the CJC. He's also a postdoctoral research fellow at Nelson Mandela University, where he focuses on energy and climate justice research and education to support movements like the coalition. Alex is a first-generation South African whose family hails from the small island nation of Mauritius. He's dedicated over a dozen years to research, writing, teaching, and activism on climate change. So welcome to all our panelists. We're very, very excited to have you.
I see little faces popping up, which is always a good sign. And I see some great celebration in the chat and on the participants as well. Thanks so much for that, Shaazia. Yeah, I think it's going to be a very fruitful discussion. All of our panelists come from different areas, different focus spaces, and so we definitely look forward to how we're kind of moving into this today. So jumping straight into it with the first question. So a big part of what we're trying to understand today is just a bit of the landscape and how the landscape of energy justice, the landscape of government, and the specifically the DMRE, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy's role is in our society, in the ways that we work, the ways that we engage with day-to-day systems. And so I think this first question really hits the hammer on the head, and we're going to start with you, Promise, and then move to Kholwani, Thandile, and Alex on this. And so, yeah, I think maybe just hearing from you, Promise, what impacts does the DMRE play in the work that you do, and what are the impacts on people that you work with? I mean, coming from like Vukani environmental movement and being in a coal-affected community, I think we can definitely expect quite a bout of lived experience as it relates to this question. And so once again, what impacts does the DMRE play in the work that you do, and what are the impacts on people that you work with? Promise.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel. I don't want to show myself. Oh, I'm a bit tired. I'm just, yeah.
Don't worry, I'll share your bio on the screen so that people can look at you there.
Okay, yeah. As we have Vukani environmental movement and living in a coal-affected area in eMalahleni, it is very much difficult to be surrounded by mines, adding up also with coal-fired power stations. But the impacts of mining are very disturbing in people's health, and also disturbing in our environment at large, in our water, in our land, and also in everything that we need as communities in our daily basis. The most painful part out of this production or mining of coal, health is the key issue, the health problems that are facing up all the time. So it is very difficult to live in such a coal-affected communities. The worst part out of all this, we do have a lot of engagement with our local government and also with DMRE. But the very sad part is that our voices, it seems as if we are not allowed to say a word concerning the coal that is affecting our health and our environment at large. Because we see as if everyone who is living in this area is affected in different ways though, but the young are most affected in hardship in breathing, asthma. Some of our young children doesn't even attend school during winter. They just go back to school around September when the cold is better. So just think of you seeing your child and getting more load of trying to have to make the ends meet, to see your child being taken care of. You have to find ways on how you have to provide. There is a lot that is happening in our area. I can maybe speak in the morning, midday, maybe 2 days, trying to describe the frustration of coal mining. And the very painful part out of this is that we see the impacts of climate change, and we feel that our government is not, there is no political will into making sure that we reduce whatever that is causing our climate to burn. So we are in a space of thinking of a right direction, because as we speak yet, we see that mining companies are coming in, even though we are trying to make sure that they have to stop, because we can't see us as South Africans reducing or making sure that we are ending up saving our climate, and time is ticking. And there is a lot into coal mining and the impacts around people's human health. Yeah. So I think I can be short, like, yeah.
Thank you for that, Sister Miss. I think what you bring into the light is just, and there's a reason that we wanted you to speak first. It needed to set the tone, because oftentimes people who engage in the space don't live the experience. You can say you stand in solidarity, stand in collaboration, but you don't experience it. And so we really wanted you to just come today and share the honest truth, not sugarcoated for anyone so that they feel better about the circumstance or the situation, but speaking from the experience is the most important thing, so that people can understand what's actually going on the ground. So yeah, I thank you for that. And I'm not gonna pity you or anything. I don't think anyone, you are asking for pity. I think everyone needs to be angry and stand beside you in any way, in every way that is possible. So a massive thank you to you for that, Sister Miss. And yeah, maybe Kholwani, if you can kind of just dive into a little bit more of, and I think I won't share your bio on the screen because I think you're going to keep your camera on, just a bit of the work that you do as an advocacy officer, with the Green Connection, and in this kind of energy governance or energy justice space. What are the impacts, or the impacts that the DMRE plays in your work and the work that you do, engaging with frontline communities, engaging with civil society organizations, CBOs, and more. Yeah. Thank you, Kholwani.
Thanks, Gabriel, and thanks to everyone who's on the call. Sorry, guys, I'm currently experiencing load shedding at home. However, I've made alternative ways and currently in a restaurant. So if you don't hear me, I'll try just to project myself so that everyone can clearly hear me. And once again, thank you for having me, being part of one of the panelists. I think we can all agree that the department has a huge impact on the work that we do. If the department was making proper decisions around energy, minerals, and resources within South Africa, people's health and livelihoods wouldn't be put at risk, right? So in turn, the communities we work with are negatively impacted by the profit-driven decisions made by the department itself. I'm convinced that government looks at it from a profit point of view and not a human dignity level, considering the damage, destruction, and environmental harm on social effects this has on communities that we work with. I mean, as we all know, over the years, we have seen poor decisions being made by the DMRE, be it granting car powerships, electricity generation licenses in an attempt to solve the electricity crisis. In another instance, they have granted Searcher to undertake seismic surveys in the ocean to look for oil and gas. And lastly, have been unable to develop an updated energy plan over the years. And thus we find ourselves in this crisis currently, simply because there hasn't been proper energy planning. I mean, one would ask, how do we solve this? Look, I believe we need to move away from the catered deployment within the system of South Africa. We need to get people who are forthcoming and willing to listen to the voices of communities in order for structured governance and leadership to take place within a critical department such as the DMRE. In turn, it will mean that proper energy decisions will be made. Secondly, more and more communities will be involved within the process, and policy implementation will be done, obviously, properly in the long run. And I think this is why civil society, traditional leaders, small scale fishers have been fighting against oil and gas activities, not only advocacy, but also litigation part of it. And this forms of legal action help to delay, but not only delay, but cancel these projects that poses a harm to the environment. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Kholwani. And I think what you brought in about, with my camera on, what you bring in about, the different forms of advocacy that one can use as it relates to kind of action, as it relates to litigation and more. We see that it's at the end of the day, it's civil society pushing the hardest and fighting the most for the world that government should be providing. And oftentimes we find ourselves at a stone wall, particularly with this department. And so, yeah, I think feeding off of what you've said there and a little bit about what promises, as mentioned earlier, Thandile, if I could bring you on and have you share a little bit about just the engagement or the way that the DMRE has impacted the way that you work, all the different issues and spaces that you engage in, as it relates to energy policy, energy access and its intersections, as mentioned earlier. So Thandile, I welcome you.
Afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I totally agree with the previous panelists. I think we share a lot of similarities in terms of the work that we do and the challenges that DMRE poses to the work that we're doing. So Greenpeace Africa works quite closely with communities in Secunda on the main issue of air pollution, and DMRE and the extensive work they've done to undermine minimum emission standards in the Mpumalanga region, and the continuous work of our government in terms of allowing for mining rights to be allowed in areas that are bordering residential areas, continuing to pollute the air around those communities has led us to the situation that we're in right now. And these communities continue to be afflicted not only in terms of the poor air quality in their areas, but as well as by the continuous effort by DMRE to make sure that we are continuously selling major portions of our lands. As we see right now, they're partitioning pieces of the ocean and selling it off to carbon majors. And ultimately, that leads us to a situation where communities are reaching out to us and are concerned about how this is going to impact their livelihoods. And we're forced to intervene and try challenge the DMRE as much as possible. I think it's quite clear from the stance that they've taken is that they are prioritizing profit over people. And time again, we're seeing that people have to take the back seat while they drive the push for profits. So that's the work that we're doing, that DMRE is impacting. Of course, many South Africans are being affected by load shedding as well. And that's an issue that affects every single one of us. And so we continue to campaign for a shift away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy that will not only provide us with some stability to our energy security that we're looking for right now, but will also allow for the communities that are affected by air pollution to experience some sort of reprieve, that they'll be able to initiate efforts to clean up that area and allow for people to actually enjoy their right to an environment that is safe and free from harm. So that's the way in which our work or DMRE's efforts have been interrupting with our work and our ability to enjoy an environment that is safe and free.
Thank you so much for that, Thandile. I think the many things have come out from that, and I think what you said there about the continued push for profits before people, or profits over people, is something that takes me kind of perfectly into kind of asking Alex the same question, because I believe, and I know for a fact, that the CJC has in the past held kind of town halls and roundtables and things like that. And what is it called? A tribunal. That's what it was last year in March. And I think time and time again we see the need for collective action to combat these injustices, collective action from civil society. And as the Climate Justice Coalition, or as the elected General Secretary of the Climate Justice Coalition, Alex, would you like to share just a little bit about how the DMRE impacts the work of the CJC, but also of the different sectors of civil society, labor and more, that are part of the CJC?
Very much, Gabriel, and thanks everybody. It's good to be following those inputs. My camera decided to turn off there. Let me try that again. And yeah, I think when we think about who the DMRE is, we got to think about who it represents. And mineral resources and energy used to be two separate departments, and when they were brought together, in a way, they brought together two very problematic entities that form together the minerals energy complex in South Africa. And that minerals energy complex speaks to the fact that historically, our economy has been dominated by large mining corporations who rely on both polluting coal power as well as the exploitation of predominantly Black working class labor, right? And so that minerals energy complex really is responsible for South Africa being both the world's most unequal economy and also one of the world's most polluting economies. In fact, if you look at our economy on a per unit of GDP and the amount of pollution created for that, we're one of the worst in the world, below just a handful of other countries like Kazakhstan and some very pollution intensive economies. And so the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy is supposed to be a department that regulates these big corporations, that regulates mining capital, and ensures that energy is working in the interests of the public good, not in the interest of the coal lobby. But what we find time and time again is that it is a department that is captured by the very industries that it's supposed to represent. And so, what we've seen is that, even as apartheid ended, those same economic and ecological structures of apartheid continued to be upheld by the likes of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, keeping us stuck in this very extractive, exploitative, and polluting economic structure, which doesn't create much by way of jobs, which creates a lot of pollution. And so when we say sort of uproot the DMRE, it's not just about, tweaking within the department and making some changes to the personnel on there. It's about changing the way that this department works to work on the benefit of these big mining corporations and the coal lobby, and instead ensuring that it works in the interests of people, the public good, our right to a clean environment. And I think one of the things that we've heard time and time again across these different voices is that it is working for the profit of a few over the well-being of the many. And there was a survey that was done of mining affected communities that's one of the things that keeps coming back, is that people feel that this is a department that works on behalf of corporations and does incredible harm to communities, doesn't listen to their voices, transgresses their rights, and often does so in ways that are very threatening to activists. We've received lawsuits and threats and so on as the Climate Justice Coalition, but in some ways that's the soft face of oppression. The harder face of oppression is activists being assassinated, activists losing their lives. And you can't point directly to the DMRE, but you can point to the sorts of corporations that the DMRE works with, the way that they enable this form of oppression, often by, for example, accusing the very communities who are trying to protect their land of being foreign forces, of being colonizers of a special kind. All of that language puts communities at risk when they try to stand up for their very rights. So the DMRE itself is very implicated in this violence against communities who are trying to stand up for their rights. And so it is itself, I think, acting in ways that are quite criminal and are delinquent of its constitutional responsibilities to communities. Thanks, Gabriel.
Thanks for that, Alex. Yeah, I just want to add just on that point. It just shook me. I remember when that article came out, and it was likening Black and brown activists to the new apartheid. And yeah, I'll share that in the chat for everybody to look at.
Yeah, I think I want to maybe just thank all the panelists for their responses. What you've conjured is this picture of the DMRE as a department that works for profit and not for people, and that in turn has a huge impact on people's lives, on their health, on their livelihoods, on the way they can conduct their everyday lives. It has an impact on activists who are campaigning on behalf of these people and behalf of, the environment, I guess. And I think we're very good in this sector at defining the problems. We're very good at knowing exactly what's wrong with departments, but maybe something that we could work on is looking forward towards solution-based conversations. And I think that's something we want to do today. So for my next question, we want to ask, when we talk about uprooting the DMRE, what exactly does this look like? What is our end goal? And I'm gonna, maybe we can start again with Promise, answering that question.
Okay, yeah, it's very difficult question, but from our experience working on the ground, looking to uprooting the DMRE, we feel that the way the DMRE is structured to work with the local government is not working for everyone. And what we feel is that all these departments that's linked to the DMRE are working in silos. So there is no one room for them to sit and be straight on whatever that is not going okay. So everyone is doing whatever that he wants to do. So I think the first and foremost is to, if we can, if possible, to uproot the DMRE, is to maybe make sure, because now we do understand that there is no working together. There is no even working together within their space as government. But for us as communities, we feel that because even public participations are not inclusive enough for communities. So we feel that whatever that is happening with DMRE is to make sure that for the first time maybe in our life, if that I don't know how to put it, but if we can bring them into one room, because writing, they don't even give feedback to communities, or even the municipality now stands their feet to say, yes, we hear you communities, and whatever you are saying is with DMR, and DMR is saying whatever you are saying is with the local government. So, and it is impossible to get them in under one roof to hear the reality of what is really happening, to make sure we come to terms of how we want to see them working together and bringing communities in the space. So there is a lot in the uproot of DMRE, but in terms of looking time now, I think the best way of doing this is to be, for all of us and the panelists that are here right now, to be under one roof and making sure that we have strong points of what we want to look to see DMRE look like. So that will give us a direction on how we are going to uproot the DMRE. For me, as a community-based organization, that's how we feel, because we had never been in a space of having them in one room. All of those who are sent to be part of our engagements, they don't know nothing. They just send them in the name of DMRE, but they don't know nothing, even the problems, even the issues, even what communities needs. The community needs. So it's complicated. Let me just stop by saying that. Yeah,
Thank you, Promise. Thank you. I think what I'm hearing you say is the department itself works in silos, and they're not fully aware of the issues, and it's difficult to bring them together to hold them accountable. And we need to all be together under the same roof or just in the same room, just so that we can speak to them and we can hold them accountable for the things that they are doing. And thanks, that's great.
Maybe to add, to be more specific in bringing them together in one room, not that they have to send a DMRE employee. We need those who are in charge of making decisions in their space, so that we can't find ourselves sitting with somebody who will always say, I will bring the right person to answer your questions all the time. So that's where the problem lies.
Yeah. No, we hear you loud and clear. I think we have someone, Winnie, with your hand up. We are going to take questions. We just want to get some reactions to this very question from our panelists. So, Kholwani, I'm going to pose the same question to you. When we talk about uprooting the DMRE, what does that look like? What is our end goal?
Thanks, Shaazia. I mean, I just want to revisit the point that Alex had highlighted previously as he had a chance to speak. And one of the ways that we think this could help in some way or the other is that the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy must be restructured so that the Department of Energy must be separated in the Department of Mineral Affairs. That's the first point. But secondly, to uproot the DMRE within the Green Connection is to shape an effective functional department, right? And I guess our end goal is to inform policy design and creating monitoring tools to be in par with the standards of environmental justice for everyone. To continuously engage with the department on the development it seeks to effect by rapidly transitioning to renewable energy, firstly, and developing and revising energy planning annually with ordinary citizens. And lastly, decisions being made at a bottom-up approach, not a higher level where only few individuals are part of the discussions. So in order for us to effect change and creating impact towards governance and leadership, every step of the way, we need to be involved. So to serve people's needs in South Africa through resilience is one of the ways that we feel.
Oh, is it just me? Did we lose Kholwani there?
I think we'll ask Kholwani a little bit, but he's more than welcome to share a little bit more in his reflections later on, I think.
Yeah. I think we got quite a good picture, and similar to what Promise was saying, we're asking for accountability from this department. We're asking them to work with people from the bottom up, instead of, when people mentioned problems with the department, instead of working to make a profit with big corporations. So appreciate that. And then Thandile, we'll move on to you, and I'll pose yet again the same question. What's our end goal here?
I think when it comes to uprooting the DMRE in the immediate, the answer would be removing the barrier to transforming our system, removing the barrier to allowing us to bring renewable energy online, and removing the barrier to us actually getting a secure energy supply, and ending load shedding. But overall, it means systems change. It means deconstructing the minerals energy complex of South Africa, and finally addressing the colonial legacy of apartheid, and delivering on the promises that have been made by our democratic government. We can't be satisfied to continue staying in a system where it has broken families apart through the migrant labor system. It has continued to capitalize off of cheap Black labor. And we cannot be satisfied with a system like this continuing without there being some sort of change. And so it's an opportunity for South Africa to not only secure our energy needs, not only to meet the climate change imperative, but it's also an opportunity to meet our socioeconomic imperatives, and to see how we could forge a path forward that is inclusive for everyone and that prioritizes everyone. And we see a DMRE that is fit for purpose, fit in terms of what we need for the future, and doesn't necessarily compromise on the needs of the people, and instead works to serve the people of South Africa. And I think we've all seen how interconnected and pivotal the DMRE is to making South Africa work. So we need to ensure that that someone who is able to steer us in the right direction is at the helm, someone who's able to allow us to meet the needs that we have, and to make sure that there's an entirely a cultural change throughout the DMRE, to ensure that whoever comes in, we don't continue to see the same sort of narrative being pushed, and the same sort of behavior being pushed by our leaders that are in this position, and that they recognize the position and the importance of the DMRE in taking South Africa forward.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. I completely hear you on how interconnected the DMRE is to the struggles we face every day and the need for systems change. Thank you, Thandile. Alex, your response. What do we mean when we say we want to uproot the DMRE?
Yeah, I think this is really important. When we think about, I don't know what's going on with my video today, it doesn't seem to want to stay on. When we think about the DMRE, I think we've also got to reflect on the fact that the ANC's National Executive Committee made a decision that they want to move Eskom under the control of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. And I think under its current guise, that could be disastrous, because there is this conflict of interest between mineral resources and energy where the coal lobby dominates. But there is a possibility that in other countries, what they've done is they've created a Department of Energy that's tied into a mandate for a just transition and a move towards clean energy. And so if we could instead see Eskom and energy being consolidated under this vision for meaningful climate justice. Sorry, my camera's doing strange things. I'm going to turn it off. In this vision towards a meaningful just transition to more socially owned renewable energy. And we, as the Climate Justice Coalition, we have this vision for a green new ESCOM that is driving that transition, that is pushing forward more socially owned renewable energy, that is driving the green industrialization of South Africa, creating millions of jobs up and down the manufacturing and supply chain for renewable energy as we build locally produced renewable energy and related facilities. We roll out public transit as part of a deep transformation that's required not only to tackle the climate crisis, but to tackle the deep inequalities and unemployment and poverty that South Africa faces. But I think this isn't going to happen until we're very clear that the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy works on behalf of the people. And I think here where we need to call out the hypocrisy of someone like Mantashe that accuses civil society of being a foreign-funded force, when in fact it is the department itself that is often working on behalf of multinational corporations that extract wealth, that extract resources, like Shell, like Impact Oil and Gas Africa, like Power Ships, a Turkish-based company, like these Russian nuclear projects that they're trying to get us to pay for. There's all this sort of extractive forces that control the DMRE. And what you'll find is sometimes a company like Power Ship will write a press release accusing an organization like Green Connection of being anti-development. And then the next day, Minister Mantashe says exactly the same thing. And so I think we need to put in place clear regulation and call for a separation between corporations and states, and instead take control back so that these departments represent the people and that are actually taking us towards this meaningful transition to, more socially and ecologically just future. And in order for that to happen, I think we've got a significant power struggle on our hands because the minerals energy complex is still immensely powerful in South Africa. So we need to build up. And I think this is part of what the Climate Justice Coalition is doing, is trying to connect across different forces so we can build a movement powerful enough to reclaim energy and mining decisions for the benefit of the people. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Alex. And yeah, I think what you've said there, and I've had my opinions on things over the last year, 2 years, and I definitely agree very strongly with what you've said and with what everyone has said so far. I think what we're hearing here is that there's different avenues to reach a goal, but that we need to figure out where we put our energies the most. And it doesn't mean all focusing on one thing and ignoring everything else, but rather what are 2-3 areas of focus that we can try to tackle an issue and kind of really defeat it at its core, looking at an overarching message, looking at an overarching kind of focal point. And I think in the chat we've now already begun to see Richard Worthington over there sharing that the kind of recollection of the genesis of Uproot the DMRE actually came from the term, and I mentioned this earlier in the opening, it came from the slogan #uproot the system that was trending or that was going around as the theme for the global climate movement in 2021. And so, yeah, I think just on that note, just reflecting on the different areas and holding that together, perhaps we can open up for a short Q&A from everybody. If anyone has any questions, you can either pop it in the chat or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you to kind of go into your question. You can either direct your question at an individual or you can open it up for the space to hold. Are there any questions or and I will ask that the questions stay relatively short, just that we don't exceed time. And also, if you do have any comments, to kind of just share it in the chat rather than unmute and vocalize it now. But any questions? I see something in the anonymous chat over here. I think it could be directed to you, Promise, but I can ask it to anybody, maybe Alex and Promise. When it comes to the safety of community-based activists, how does one call for the uprootment of the DMRE when their lives and well-being are at risk? Yeah, a heavy question, but a question that is essential and crucial to any movement. The safety and the well-being of activists on the ground. I mean, early on we heard the assassinations that and just physical and emotional, mental harms that communities on the ground in the front lines experience. So how do you say uproot the DMRE when powers as powerful as the DMRE or connected allies, might be putting them at risk if they say things like that? Sis Promise, would you like to reflect on that question? If not, perhaps we can hear from Alex or Thandile or Kholwani.
I don't mind jumping in unless others are keen. And I think it's partly precisely because of how the DMRE puts activists' lives at risk that we are calling for uproot the DMRE. I think we should recognize very much that there is different risks that different activists face. Myself as somebody who's predominantly white, middle class, living in an urban area, is pretty relatively sheltered and privileged, and so the risks I face are very different compared to a rural activist facing mining communities who sometimes come in and hire hitmen and take you out, right? And so I think part of the responsibility of folks like me is to stand up and stand in solidarity. And I think this is part of what building cross-movement, intersectional movements, and solidarity with each other is about, is to ensure that we don't just sit quietly while our activists are taken out. So yeah, maybe I'll just put that out there. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Alex. I'm hoping that we can hear from Sis Promise or someone else as well to add to that. But I think your points about different abilities to speak on a topic even is something that is to be noted when it comes to the role of protection, well-being, safety. So yeah, I know that I'm getting a message from Sis Promise saying to unmute her, but I am struggling to see if we're able to unmute you. There we are. Sis Promise, go for it.
Firstly, for being an activist, I think it's like a calling, working with passion. And you, as from my side, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Just to, there are a lot of threats, yes, there are a lot of things that are happening. You ended up maybe saying, yo, I just want to live for my children. But the very much important thing is to raise more awareness and share the information that you have with more communities, so that when they want to strike, even if I die, that's the only thing I tell myself every day, that even when I die, but the reality is that those who are remaining will go on with the reality and the truth of what is happening around what we are doing. So, but yes, we have to be protected, and we need to be in a safe space on what we are doing in our daily basis. We have to be cautious also that we are threats working with our local government, because there is a lot into whatever that is happening. Yes, I can't say I will stop fighting because I will be killed, but whom am I want to see him dead because he was trying to save us? So I feel like there is less protection for activists, but we can't stop doing what we think is good for the future of for our children and the coming generation. Yeah, that's all that I can say.
Thank you so much for that, Leader. I think, yeah, same, Shaazia. My heart goes out to what you've said there and those pushing on the ground. Does anyone else have any other questions that they'd like to share right now? Otherwise, we can move into the final question before we move into our breakout discussions today. Anybody? Going once? Going twice? No? Okay. I think it's just a lot for people to sit with right now. So maybe we move straight into our next question, Shaazia, and then go into a bit of a discussion in intimate rooms. So yeah.
Sure. And so I guess for the final question for our panelists, maybe we can reflect on sort of the tactics we've already used and what you think we can do going forward this year. So given this discussion where we've already spoken about the problems, some of the solutions, what do you think we can do this year to uproot the DMRE? Do you want to start, Promise? Start us off there.
What I'm thinking to uproot, what will lead to uprooting the DMRE, as we are in the space of the load shedding, and we are saying we have to have the bottom-up approach as communities in our different spaces. I think what we can do, because even now, we are not seeing the government bringing more more campaigns or more practical exercises of energy that we must have. But we as communities, we do feel in our space that we can do more, and we can save the load shedding, save communities in the load shedding that we are facing in daily basis. If we can, maybe, I always say, if we come up with practical examples of what we want as communities, that will lead to the government to seeing that communities are capable and they can do something. But in the meantime, we are sitting down trying to figure out how we can bring them in one place. But what I think the most important thing, let us look into our different provinces where we are having activists who are really suffering in this space of load shedding. If we want to make our communities see that there is nothing that is going to happen out of the ISCOM waiting for them to do something for us. Let us fight, at the other hand, doing things practical in our own spaces, like having practical examples of how the energy that we want will look like. Maybe making sure that we involve communities to be part and parcel of what we feel can work for us to reduce the load shedding that we are facing. It will help. We will have a backup space for communities to say why we are having, why as communities we were able to have this thing that is helping us. Let the government do something, as the local government is are the people who have to service us as communities. But this is what we have done already as communities. Let the government, we don't want the local government to be in the front line of whatever that we are doing. We want them to oversee the process. Because we don't see them in the space of saying we are planning 1, 2, 3 as local government to help in this space of the load shedding that we are facing. They always say we are waiting for the national to come to us. Though in our community spaces, we are having people who have done a lot of researches on how communities can do whatever they want to do in terms of reducing, because whatever we want to be in the space of being equal. No one must be left behind, saying that we don't have 1, 2, 3, but the municipality must partner with communities' ideas on how they want to solve the problem of energy, without us forcing the space in our local government to say, this is what we want and this is what we need. It's a need for us, because now, even though we are in the space of coal-fired power station, more community people who are having electricity are unable to afford that electricity. Some are not even having that electricity. So let us be in the space of fighting that. The local government is, if they are unable to come up with solutions, let us be in the space of giving them this, making those solutions work in our space as communities. Let them come and oversee the process. If money comes in, it is not coming for them to plan in silos. They have to come with communities so that we can do whatever that will solve the problem of the load shedding and being in dark while we are having plans as communities, but no one is willing to listen on what we want as communities. I think that's enough for me.
Yeah, thank you for that promise. What I'm hearing from you is that communities are already very well aware of the problems and can come up with solutions and want to be part of solution making, of creative solution making, and not just handed things down from the government. So yeah, I hear that. More community engagement, definitely. I think we can move on to Kholwani. What do you think we can do going forward this year in our goal to uproot the DMRE?
Thanks, comrades. I'm under the impression that Gwede didn't like all the points I made previously. That's my laptop just dropped off. I think one of the ways in which we can try to address this is in two parts or two folds. The one could be advocacy. The other one would be legislation. So in order for our advocacy, we need to target women and youth activists to intervene in the policy, legislative, decision-making processes to strengthen effective implementation and governance in the environmental justice space through organizing and mobilizing communities to realize their power by being involved with environmental awareness programs. We can never say what people know is enough. Thus, we need to continuously drill, organize, conscientize, and politicize the issues that which we go through, because it's all politics at the end of the day. So through popular education, this would be another step towards creating a utopia towards environmental justice. I don't see our efforts of marching and picketing for our rights also being a problem. We can continue doing that. We could hold imbizos in communities, which is one of the ways I think back in the days people used to best organize. When we have community meetings, youth groups being organized, school-based meetings being hosted, and those are the ways that which we can move forward to chant a way towards environmental justice in this country and making sure that everyone within this country knows the change that which we'd like to see. Another aspect, particularly around legislation, is to challenge the status quo around this thing of stopping, right? Or not going to courts in order to fight the government, because government always has ways to maneuver that. So we should continue drafting submissions, making comments, attending meetings that the department hosts for us, in order for us to be well informed of the things or the issues that which we talk about, and let it be well known within these meetings. So these are the two ways that I think we should move this way, moving forward for this year. And yeah, continue to speak to communities and involve them and involve everyone, and not be counterproductive and not inviting the comrades that have bodyguards. And we move in all together. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kholwani. And I really like what you said about getting women and youth involved in legislation and legislation making. And I think what you said about holding these community mbizos speaks very well to what Promise was alluding to in her comments. So I think some great tactics and ways forward are coming out of this. So I'm excited. I'm going to move on to Thandile.
Yeah, I think there's some great ideas for what we could potentially do. And I think definitely advocacy is one that we definitely need to be present in. I think what's really important is that as we go into this year, that we are on the offense with Minister Mantashe in a lot more public ways. I think the Uproot the DMRE protests are a really great way to continue this energy of continuing to hold him accountable in unpublic platforms and expect him to respond. And we also have an opportunity to utilize all the resources in our arsenal to target him and really champion public participation. I think we've already over the past year seen a really great demonstration of this in the way that we've been able to disrupt his plans on co-powership. We've been able to disrupt the plans with Shell, though it may be in the immediate. We continue to see that he still has intentions to pursue both of those projects. But there's still a lot that we have to do, and there's still a lot of angles at which we can tackle the DMRE and the plans that they have, particularly TIPSA and the projects that are occurring in the Western Cape, continuing to challenge those and ensure that they don't go forward, continuing to interfere with the plans that they have for extending the licensing for Koeberg. And I think today as well is the comments are due on that submission for the extension of Koeberg's long-term operation. And one of the key things coming out of that is the fact that it was not really a well public they did not prioritize public participation. And in the documents that have been circulated, there's areas that are heavily redacted, and that really interferes with our ability to be able to participate as the public in affairs that affect us. And so it's very important that we continue to challenge those types of movements and call for the suspension of that public participation process, especially if it does not work for us and does not include us in that process. There are many other projects in which we can continue to participate and ensure that our voices are being heard and that public participation is being prioritized, and where we can use every opportunity we have. If it's litigation, then we're there in the courtrooms challenging them. If it's advocacy, then we're there advocating for the changes that we need to see. And we continue to use every bit of arsenal that we have to be able to challenge the DMRE.
Yeah, completely hear you, Thandile. And like you said, and like we spoke about previously, targeting the DMRE, their projects, and Minister Mantashe has worked in the past, and continually putting pressure is something that we don't need to stop doing. Alex, maybe the final comment. What do you think? How can we chart our way forward?
Yeah. I think one of the things that's really important for us to remember is that what we're engaged in is both power and, to a certain extent, class struggle, because what the DMRE represents is rich and wealthy corporations and individuals who are extracting wealth and profits at the detriment of people. So it's a power struggle that we're in, right? And so if we want to hold those that are in power to account, we must make their lives uncomfortable. And here I am looking into the participants, and I'm glad to see Cleo Kobile, one of the Climate Justice Coalition organizers, because she's emphasized repeatedly that, we need to start being quite disruptive, and we need to go everywhere and disrupt politicians. And I think it was nice to follow Thandile here to see the Greenpeace comrades that went and interrupted Gwede Mantashe's public speaking event the other day. And, I have a personal axe to grind with Mantashe. He is an awful politician, one of the worst. But it is also across the DMRE and across the mining corporations and the whole minerals energy complex throughout the ANC and the ruling party and the ruling elite that we need to be showing up and disrupting and making life uncomfortable. And we need to build movements powerful enough to show up and do this in ways that can really create meaningful obstacles and enforce the will of the people over the will of these corporations. And so I think we've got a big task ahead in terms of pushing for these shifts. And I think the load shedding crisis does provide us with an opportunity, particularly as the ANC tries to shift Eskom to the DMRE, to intervene and try block that move and move it towards a more positive alignment with maybe a department that's aligned with climate justice, with a just energy transition, and that puts the governance of people at the core of it rather than the governance of corporations over people. So I am hopefully looking forward this year to us building in ways that ensures major disruption of those who are trying to ram through a problematic profit-driven agenda and builds people power to ensure that it instead works in our favor. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Alex, and thanks for that, everyone who shared. I think, yeah, we've got a clear understanding now of who the DMRE are, as it relates to civil society and different sectors in civil society. We understand the barriers that the DMRE puts forward, the different key stakeholders that need to be addressed in tackling this. But I think as we go into our breakout rooms now, I implore you all to just think about what's been said already, and in a bit of a discussion, bring forward some ideas of ways forward. The question that I have right now is just, and as I just reflect that, I want to also just share the fact that there are different ways to uproot the DMRE. We're hearing the targeted approach, the action on the ground approach. We're hearing about advocacy. Sometimes, and I used this analogy last year, it's while one group storms the door, the other jumps through the window while they aren't looking. It's at Project 90 we've started using the thing inspire, mobilize, because that's our slogan. So inspire, mobilize, infiltrate. And so just the infiltrate is like a hidden section. And so I think a big part of it is just looking at the different ways that we can take action, the different ways we can bring forward change, the different ways we can uproot the DMRE. And so on the topic of different ways, for you personally, for your organizations, for your areas of society, maybe you aren't a part of an organization, but you're a part of a movement, or you're just an ordinary person who wanted to join today. What are the different ways we can go about uprooting the DMRE? We've heard from Kholwani, Thandile, Promise, Alex, just some tactics and strategies that they'd like to look into this year. But 4 people saying something doesn't really echo a way forward. So we'd love to hear from you all as well now, as you go into your breakout rooms. What are the different ways we can go about uprooting the DMRE, we, as in the collective us, and how do we get people behind, to continue to build a movement behind this? People have priorities. People would sooner look to put food on the table than march on the ground, because unfortunately there are priorities in order. And so how do we draw those intersections? How do we link it? So this is more of an ideation session right now of about 5 to 10 minutes, going into just a little bit about what are the different ways we can go about uprooting the DMRE, and how do we continue to build a movement behind this. So I'm going to, I see Comrade Cleo, would you like to share something before we go into those breakout rooms?
May I please check if the question that you're asking on the tactics is for the breakaway rooms or it's for now?
So we're going to go into the breakout rooms to discuss that, and then someone will reflect. I ask that someone will reflect from those breakaways. So I'm just going to put everyone in chat in the breakout rooms quickly, and I'd ask that one person or 2 people just share back a few of the tactics, the strategies, the ways we can continue to uproot the DMRE, the ways that we can build movements, come back, and then we'll kind of sync things together. So please do jump into those breakouts, and we'll see you shortly. The only person that shouldn't jump into a breakout is Shaazia. Thank you. Here we are. Welcome back. Welcome back. I see people streaming in. I think I'm noting time, and I know I did say past. We would end, but I'm known to be a bit of a liar. And lying for the sake of the movement, I think is an honorable lie. And so
may I please go back to my room for a minute? Thandile was still talking about something.
Leader, I can't, unfortunately, because I closed all breakout rooms, it won't allow me to let anyone back in, because everyone's going to be here in like 5 seconds.
Okay.
So maybe Thandile can share from your group, and then she can add what she didn't finish saying.
Okay, no, it's fine. Thank you.
Cool. Welcome back, everybody. I see everyone's popped back on. Excellent. So I'm going to encourage now that we have the different groups share. I know that some of you might not have had an opportunity to say anything to its completion, but time is of the essence, and I'm smelling the end of it right now. So maybe from group 1, we can hear just a short kind of summary of what was being discussed. And that was the group with Alex, Promise, Elise, and Sabatini. So maybe we can hear from you. Group 1.
Tried to get other people on the spot to speak, but it was tough to get them. And so they said, I must. And I think one key thing was about popular education. And Thomas made this really good point. Oh, Sabatini made a very good point that we talk about free, prior, informed consent from the DMRE. But if we are meaning that properly, we must also ensure that we're informing all the communities that we work with as much as possible, so that, you know, we're not just like parachuting in, but like actually we are prioritizing popular education, we're getting word out there. So for me, that point by Sabatini was a really nice one.
Thanks for that. Group 1, I think popular education at its core, education at the core of activism, nothing can go wrong from there, so long as you're learning the correct information. And so I definitely agree. To its core, education is the foundation of mobilization. Oh, rhyming scheme. Poet, I didn't even know it. Room 2 is the room with Cassie, Alton, Erna, Mo, and Richard. Does anyone from room 2 want to share? Now, I know for a fact that at least 4 of those members are very talkative. So one of you, please do share. I can put you on the spot, maybe, Mo?
Okay, so I was just going to say we didn't actually agree on, one particular way forward, because we had different perspectives. And actually, Elton was in the middle of giving his. So I'm really not sure what to say. I don't know if maybe Elton would like to continue with his submission.
Perhaps you could, Comrade Alton, you could reflect a little bit, or Mo, you could reflect a little bit, and then Comrade Alton can bring it to a close of your group sharing with anything that he hadn't finished saying as well. It doesn't have to be any direct action, but it can be just an idea of what was being discussed. Mo, Alton?
Okay, I'll just speak a little bit, and hopefully Elton or Richard can come in. So we'd actually discussed potential avenues to try and promote change in the DMRE or uproot it, and we discussed using platforms such as the PCC consultations to take the message of uproot DMRE forward. I think there were some really good points about promoting, or rather advocating for, more integrated marine spatial planning. And this would involve having DFFE engaging with the DMRE more, so that we don't have the sort of situations that we've been having regarding, what I would call violations of what should be marine laws. Yeah. And then Elton was coming in to say that he had a different approach, and then we didn't quite get into it. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yes, he is. Thank you for that reflection, Mo. Comrade Alton, would you like to share?
Yes, thanks, Gabriel. I'll be very, very short because the difficulties that we didn't get a chance to consolidate. But what I was proposing is that we need to have a platform of engagement with the DMRE around issues emanating from various operations, mining operations in the country, and including the oil and gas explorations around the coast or in the coast. So I was thinking that a facilitated dialogue maybe would do, but knowing or keeping in mind that obviously we're going to deadlock. Therefore, then we will call for an action so that we push a more transformative agenda, within the DMRE itself. So I was thinking along those lines.
Thank you for that, Comrade Alton. I think what we're hearing from this group specifically is there are different ways to do something, and not everyone has to kind of always agree on something, but I think it all, at the end of the day, does align some way or shape or form. And so, yeah, I just want to thank Group 2 for your reflections on that, and looking at time, just asking Group 3 with Francina, Linda, Melisizwe, Mbai, and Rosalie. Does anyone from that group want to reflect back fast shortly?
Okay. Thank you, and greetings to everyone. On Group 3, we didn't have much time to dwell on this issue, but what we said is the importance of capacity building, and then also looking at the workers, trade unions, so that they know what climate change and what is the work of DMRE. And the other part is doing more work on social media, like if those pickets will be done there, things like the assemblies and others on social media, protests on social media, and litigation against DMRE, but led by women and youth. And the other one is holding DMRE accountable for the impact caused by mines in the communities. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Comrade Benson. I love how you say that you didn't go into much detail, and then detail was heard. Thank you for that, and I appreciate everyone in Group 3 for that reflection. And I'll mention at the end, after Comrade Cleo and Thandile kind of share a little bit more in that space. Com, would you like to reflect on Group 4? I mean, the dynamic duo.
Okay, so in Group 4, we say, because it's important to do a popular education. So first of all, the popular education first step must be linking the struggles of a particular communities that we are doing a popular education. For example, for communities that they do a work around water and water pollution, we have to inform them on why, in fact, is there a water water shedding, and why is there a water pollution, and who is polluting, and how then to hold them accountable for all the diseases around water pollution and around the water shedding, and why in fact there must be a water shedding while other people, they are not even buying that water, and they are not even using that water for human needs. And coming to the issue or an example of organization who concentrates on food and food sovereignty. So we said we have to inform people that, in fact, the reason why their food is not growing as healthy as before, and now their concentration has to be food challenges. It's because of the distraction that is happening and the policies around DMRE. In fact, they are the ones who are pushing that people, they eat that great food. The minute we can master in linking struggles of all the organizations and movement and areas with why is that happening and why do we have to fight that, then it will be easy that when we address or we put ourselves in dealing with the DMRE, everybody understands that we are in this problem because of this problem and because of the policies that are in fact not working for human needs, but for profit needs that are committed by the DMRE and Mr. Gwede himself. Maybe Thandile can add.
Thandile, would you like to add on to what Comrade Cleo has added there?
It was perfect, nothing else to add.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think I love how sorry, Com, I just always love how you kind of like passionate, and then at the end you're like, but that's just it, I suppose. Like it's not much. It's just the entire strat plan. And so yeah, I appreciate your passion and the effort that everyone here today has brought into the space. We won't necessarily dwell with too much, but Shaazia, do you want to maybe take us into just the last kind of round of reflections or just comments from panelists before I bring it to a bit of a close with Nick?
Yeah, sure. I mean, looking at time, I won't, I know our panelists know a lot, but I won't give you that much time. Can I ask you for a sentence on how you reflect on today? It can be on something you've taken away, or it can be about a tactic going forward. Give us a sentence. And I know that's a little bit of a challenge. Can we go to Promise?
Just a reminder that the sentence will have no commas. It's got no run-ons, no additions, no, and by the way, so just a small sentence in any closing statement you have.
Can I go?
Go for it.
I think we need to continuously mobilize, organize, and conscientize our communities. Thanks.
Short, sweet, we love it. Thanks, Com, for taking that instruction. Well, that's a good one. I think we'll go to Promise last because maybe she's struggling with connection. So Thandile, do you want to give us your sentence?
I think what came out of the breakout, I was there just hearing what was coming from the other breakout rooms. I think mobilizing and centering education and that mobilization is a really important tool. So I think it could be a really pivotal tool in terms of us coordinating in terms of numbers and movement building to be able to get us to a point where we could really challenge the DMRE and hold Minister Mantashe accountable.
Centering education. Love it. Alex?
Building on what Gabriel said, if we want to uproot the DMRE, we have to uproot the system. And in this case, that's very much the minerals energy complex.
I'm hearing systems change. Love it. Promise, do you want to give us your final statement?
They take it all.
Okay.
Let's unite and be strong and be in one voice.
Unity, solidarity. Got it. Got it. Gabriel, over to you.
Thank you so much to everyone for that. I think we've heard now exactly the core values of how we need to move together. And so as we move forward throughout the rest of this year and as we move out of today's meeting, remember, mobilize, organize, conscientize our communities, centering education, looking at the system and the way that needs to bring forward change and unity and solidarity with all. A massive thank you to Alex, to Promise, to Kholwani, to Thandile for availing their time and being here today. A massive round of applause to them all for their knowledge, for their expertise, for the space that they've allowed for us to engage in. A massive thank you to everybody who has participated, either left because of load shedding or has joined a bit later because of load shedding as well. But just everyone who brought a different perspective into the room today, either in an idle way or in an active way. A massive thank you to my my fellow host, Shaazia, for her amazing kind of structuring and holding of space. And because I'm not a shy person, I'm going to be vain. And a massive thank you to myself for kind of remembering to turn on my camera at certain stages speaking today. So yeah, just wanted to say next steps. We will make sure that this recording is circulated with all those who have applied or registered. We'll make sure that it's posted either on the CJC YouTube and it one day will live on the uprootthedmre.org website, hopefully going forward. And then also just a synced report I'll pull out of today's recording, just so that we can have clear, visible actionables of how we want the campaign Uproot the DMRE to look like and what we mean by Uproot the DMRE. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your attention and more. And I wish you a good day.
Thank you, Gabriel, for leading us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabe. Thank you, Shaazia.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.